There are certain foods that are good for our health and certain foods that are maybe not so good for our health, and for different reasons. And one of the things that I've educated you about in my other videos is something called deuterium, which is heavy hydrogen, and it's something that can slow down our nanomotors in our mitochondria. And of course, our mitochondria are those little organelles within our cells that help to create our energy. And the truth is, our body actually makes deuterium depleted water, but deuterium in itself is that heavy hydrogen is not a good thing, and certain foods are certainly higher in that deuterium. And these foods, if you're over consuming them, if you don't have a natural sunlight on your skin to actually deplete that deuterium and for your mitochondria to make that deuterium depleted water internally, you could start lacking energy, you could start gaining weight, you could feel unwell, and of course it can lead to a whole host of mitochondrial diseases, cancer being one of them. So really limiting our deuterium, eating the right foods in the right season, under the right temperatures and sunlight is going to make a big difference. Let's go through a list of 6 different foods that are and tend to be higher in that deuterium. Okay, number 6 on my list is oats. Now, you may have heard me talk about oats before. Not my favorite food, especially if they are not organic oats. The reason being is that glyphosate toxicity is one of these things that I've talked about in other videos, but oats also do have that deuterium at 141 parts per million, so it is a substantial amount of deuterium. Okay, number 5 on my list is potatoes. Now, in the back of your mind, I want you to try to think of what number 1 is on my list. Okay, number 5, potatoes at 143 parts per million of that deuterium. So this is often why a lot of people sometimes don't do well on a higher carbohydrate diet, because they think it's the carbohydrates, but is it actually a deuterium problem that's causing your gas and bloating and maybe, lack of energy, and of course those sugar spikes. This will also have an effect on your leptin resistance, your insulin resistance, too much of that deuterium. Okay, number 4 on my list is beet sugar, which is often a lot of processed foods now. That beet sugar is at 146 parts per million of that deuterium. Again, a sweeter food. So in order to metabolize sweeter foods, we need to have more natural sunlight exposure. Okay, number 3 on my list is wheat flour, weighing in at 150 parts per million of that deuterium. And again, a lot of people have what is seemingly, a wheat sensitivity, a gluten sensitivity. Well, is it a gluten problem or is it a deuterium problem? We also know that wheat is notorious for having that glyphosate issue as well. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what is the big problem with wheat, especially if it's not organic and typically grown in North America? It's going to have some of these problems with deuterium and the glyphosate. Okay, number 2 on my list is corn at 155 parts per million of that deuterium. Again, not one of my favorite foods, especially if it's not organic. It's something that you have to sort of think twice about when you are eating corn, or it could be popcorn, corn flour, it could be any type of corn product. It is now hidden in a lot of different foods, especially corn oil and of course high fructose corn syrup, which seems to be snuck into every processed food, especially if it's sweet, that's out there. Okay, and number 1 on my list, did you guess what it is? It's actually touted as a health drink. It is coconut water at 156 parts per million. So here's the thing, the meat and the actual flesh of the coconut, probably healthier. The deuterium tends to go into the water of the coconut. Maybe not the healthiest thing to be drinking, especially if you don't live at the tropics where the coconuts grow. Also, the coconut oil is a health food, so that we don't have to worry about the high deuterium in the fat of the coconut, only in the water. Now, you may be asking yourself, how do I get out and get more natural sunlight exposure? I've heard that the sun is so dangerous and I don't want to damage my skin. Well, I do have some tips for you, and that's in another video. I want you to check it out, 6 safe sun exposure tips. You're going to learn a lot there. I'll see you there.